Yisrael.
I said that this morning. Twice.
What a coincidence.
3 times, I think. Yeah, 3 times.
So this was said in Vayeschanan, like this year. Tafkuf Samech Bet, 1802. So this was the first time that the Alter Rebbe was in Liadi. In 1802, he said this mimer.
Okay.
Meaning, first time he was there in Vayeschanan.
So this was after the when he widened out and he expanded?
But if you look at the map, I finally looked at the map. The distance from Liadi to Lozhna
It's very close.
is about 30 kilometers.
Yeah.
And to Lubavitch is another 30 kilometers.
Yeah.
They're very close.
Yeah. No, this was after the Rebbe came out of prison.
Right. He came out at the end of in the middle of 1801. This is 1802 towards the end of 1802, or still the middle, I guess, because they're talking about July, August.
The horse and wagon, 30 kilometers is a few hours drive.
Yeah. Okay. שמע ישראל השם אלוקינו השם אחד ואהבת. וצריך להבין למה הזכיר בית פעמים הווי. Why there twice Hashem? He could have said שמע ישראל השם אלוקינו אחד. He could have said, listen Israel, hear O Israel, God, or Havaya is our God, He's one.
Oh, by the way, I have to tell you, Friday night we had 5 Portuguese, Brazilian girls and my wife. I told them the whole mind that we learned in the week, from beginning to end. They were very interested in it. They learned too much about Hasidus. They know very well.
וצריך להבין למה הזכיר שני פעמים הווי, ועוד למה הפסיקו אנשי כנסת בין אחד ואהבת ברור שם כבוד ומחותו ללמד. So why did the Chachamim of the Second Temple, when they told us how to do this mitzvah, they added a pasuk that's not there. They added a verse that doesn't appear in the Torah.
But they said it.
Said that this is part of it.
Yeah,
they said it is part of it. The Medrash is you could say, a tradition that there was. But the idea to put it into davening, that takes more than just a tradition. That's a decision. וגם צריך להבין פירוש שמע שהוא לשון אסיפה. Shema also means in the Bible together. Where do we see this? בלשון וישמע שאול את העם. In Shmuel it says he gathered the people. It says וישמע. So the word Shema, when was this? When he gathered them in order to go to war. וגם לשון הבנה. And it also means to understand, to comprehend. Okay. והנה, ועבדו לשון ציווי, וגם לשון עתיד. So we know...
By the way, did the king speak in Mishkan, or was it only when they built the Beis Hamikdash? On Yom Kippur. When the king reigned and said, you know, all what I've said is all that's to say, and the whole thing on Yom Kippur.
The king never laned. The king only laned on Hakel. On Hakel. Usually it's a high priest who lanes on Yom Kippur.
But the king used to come and make a speech.
So that's only on Hakel.
Yeah, but was that before the Beis Hamikdash? Also in the Mishkan?
Apparently, yes.
Okay. So he didn't say it for that. He didn't call them together for that.
No. והנה ואהבת הוא לשון ציווי וגם לשון עתיד. So ואהבת, the next pasuk says, and you shall love Hashem your God with all your soul, with all your might, with all your so on. So ואהבת, you shall love, is both saying לשון ציווי, you should love, meaning love as a command. וגם לשון עתיד, it also means as a description of the future. You will come to love. פירוש, שאומר הכתוב, as the Baal Shem Tov said, how can you command the person to love? So he said the answer is that it's not just a command, it's a description of the future. It's saying this is a consequence. The consequence, says the Alter Rebbe, when a person meditates deeply on the fact that God is one, he will come to love God.
We hope.
It's a consequence. What do you mean?
Is that a guarantee?
Yeah, it's a guarantee. בכל לבבך ושני יצריך, שאפילו היצר רע הוא נכנע ובטל לגבי אהבת השם. And really what does it mean? What does it mean to love? It's not just to love stuff, not just a general feeling love. It says more than that. It's that the evil inclination, the negative side, the animal soul of man will come to recognize God. That's the idea of this. You might say this is the basis, the foundation of all of Chabad. All of Chabad is saying the divine soul knows God. The animal soul has no clue. What do you have to do? You have to find.
The animal soul is fighting against Hashem.
Okay, so it doesn't know.
It knows exactly what it is.
No, it's not fighting against. It just doesn't know.
Like a malek.
No. It's not chaz v'shalom. Your animal soul is not a malik. Chaz v'shalom. Completely the opposite. The animal soul of a Jew is holy and pure and good. Just one thing it doesn't know. It's like an animal. It doesn't kill anybody. It doesn't do anything wrong. It just doesn't know God. It takes it time to know, like any animal that's born on a farm. It takes it time to know, even an ox, which is maybe the most useful animal in the end, it takes it time to be domesticated. It takes it time to understand who it's serving. That's all. There's nothing wrong with it. It didn't do anything wrong. The animal soul of a Jew would never do an Aveira. They say that the only reason the people do Aveira is that what's a Ruach Shtut? Ruach Shtut is what the Zohar calls Shed Mishedinu Chaim. It's a false idea that comes from the surroundings, from the environment.
Well, how does he get that?
It's the same way that everything gets there. You have ears and you have eyes and you have nose and you smell and you breathe and you see. Okay? So you see these things, you hear these things, and they cause you to leave the right path of the animal soul. The animal soul, by its nature, is very good. Except it doesn't know Hashem. It doesn't understand. That's why, because it doesn't know Hashem, it's influenced by external forces, by external ideas. But on the contrary, a person should look at his animal soul that's holy and pure. There's nothing wrong with it. What does it not have? It does not have consciousness of God. So he says, the divine soul knows God. The animal soul doesn't know God. So there has to be an intermediary that will connect the two. Hello, my name is the divine soul. Hello, my name is the animal soul. And then he says, what's the common language? The common language is a language of rational thought. Rational thought, that's Chabad, is the attempt of the mind, the intellectual soul, to explain to the animal soul why God is the way He is and why you should serve Him. So he says, if you come to meditate upon Hashem twice a day, and you understand what it means that God is one, then even your animal soul will come to love God. In any case, even if it is already influenced before you started teaching it something, it's already influenced by external forces. When it comes to sin, it'll be hard for it. Because it says, I know I'm doing something wrong. Why do I know I'm doing something wrong?
To me, they're having too much problem. In my case,
it's not true. No. It's not true. Why are you putting yourself down? Every time you do something you're not supposed to do, you feel bad about it. You understand that this is something that's not good. And you don't understand it's something not good because I'll lose my world to come. You understand that something is not good because I'm disconnecting from God in this world.
Turning your face away. Turning your face away.
Okay. And that's the only way once you've understood, once the animal soul has been explained, has been taught, that's what we say, that what's a tinok shenishba? What is it we call the most of the Jews in the world today are not from. Why? Because they were never taught. Somebody say, well, what do you mean you taught? They think to teach is like to indoctrinate. No, we're not talking about indoctrination. We're talking about explaining. There are good explanations that the animal soul can understand. We're not talking about you have to be a pious, holy individual whose mind is constantly in the abstract world. Not at all. Like everything can be explained in regular, normal terms that the animal soul understands. So if it's not done, the person wasn't educated. We don't say he wasn't indoctrinated. We're not indoctrinating him. We're explaining to him. And if you never had a good teacher, if you never had somebody to help you understand why this is important, why this is how the world is. So many people don't understand the first thing that God is not up in the sky. They don't get that. They think that God is up in the sky and that's it. They don't have any concept that God is everything you see. And most importantly, it's your life force. That's the main thing that we're talking about. So if you don't know that, you don't know that it's intimate. You think it's some kind of transcendent thing. So even not most of the Jews in the world don't know that. It sounds ridiculous, but that's the situation. I'm not even. You know what? I'm not even talking about most of the Jews who are not from. Most of the Jews who are from don't know this. They've never heard this. And it's such a shock. I can't tell you. Every single day on Facebook, I see people who are shocked by the revelation that Hashem is the table also. Huh? I thought that Hashem was. Again, they think about it like the Christian picture, which is Hashem indoctrinates you. Hashem comes from the outside. He's not in the world. Why did the Christians have to invent Yoshke? Because that's how the world thought. For them, it was a step forward. But, like everybody wants an experiential, sense of godliness, they went overboard. They went crazy. There's a lot of Jews today. Unfortunately, there's people who also have not been educated properly. There's one guy in particular who's about tshuva, but he looks Hasidish because he became Hasidish, and he goes overboard completely. So he doesn't, Chas v'shalom, he doesn't go to Christianity, he doesn't go to saying somebody's God or anything like that. No, he's settled, but he teaches people that you're supposed to experience with your senses godliness. What's that one?
Who's that?
My wife.
No, whose sisters?
I'm not going to say names.
Oh, okay. Selech biyoter kidvoreh.
Anyway, so most people don't understand this. They don't know to say thank you to Hashem. What do they know? They know that after you finished eating, you're supposed to say some bracha. So they think we say thank you to Hashem after we finished eating, because Hashem is not connected to the eating. He's not connected to the in this week's next week's parsha. We have the mitzvah of bracha. So they think once I'm finished eating, then you have to pay your dues as a word to Hashem. But they don't feel this. It's a very simple thing that at every bite you take. Of course, you say thank you to Hashem at every bite you take. You enjoy it. Every moment that you have an enjoyable moment with your family, you say thank you to Hashem. What do you mean? This is Hashem. You don't have to say it like out loud because it gets a little weird. And it's also, I don't think that's the way Hashem wants you to live. But you experience Hashem, that's what it means. You don't have to look very far. Okay.
Yeah,
In any case.
We had an interesting moment yesterday. We have a towel, it's not a towel, a group on WhatsApp, which is called the Cass Cousins. My father had 4 brothers and 5 brothers altogether. Hashem, one is still alive, but the rest are not. So the cousins decided to be ashamed just to lose contact with each other just because some were here, some were there, some were from, some were from. So they have a group. And it happened to be my sister's English birthday. So the cousins didn't realize it was Tisha B'Av. So they started sitting there, Mother's Day, for your birthday, right? So then one of them suddenly says, "Oh, sorry, we're so sorry we wished you Mother's Day for your birthday. We didn't realize it's Tisha B'Av, right? We wouldn't have done it, like." So then there's this deal. So then he writes, very interesting comment, he says, "By the way, for those of you who are interested, there's some webinar that you can look into to see the history of the second Beis Hamikdash and how it was destroyed." And he says, "But it's not religious. It's only an historical explanation. Nothing to worry about. It's not religious. It's only historical explanation."
Won't hurt you.
Huh? He's not religious. So you know,
I understand.
don't think I'm trying to tell you something.
Good. Chaz v'shalom.
He goes actually to Chabad from time.
And anyway, that's the main problem. That it's not that it hasn't been indoctrinated; it hasn't been taught. Nothing. People don't know. You know, it's almost impossible to understand how the world can be. You know, we pride ourselves in being people of the book or something like that, and yet most people don't know the first thing. When I say most people, I mean 90%.
I think you're wrong. I don't think it hasn't been taught. I think it's been untaught.
Maybe. It's even worse. והנה כל אחד ואחד אומר 2 פעמים בכל יום קריאת שמע, שחרית וערבית, ואף על פי כן אינם מגיעים לבחינת ואהבת. It says, but there's a kasha on this. It says so many people say Kriyat Shema twice a day. Back when everybody was frum, everybody was observant. It says they didn't come to love. So what's going on?
What did they come to?
Nothing. They said it.
And then that was it, they went home.
And they went home. And everything was the same. And even when they were saying it, they didn't feel anything. There was no feeling of love. There was certainly no feeling of extra commitment. None of this happened. So how can you tell me that the consequence of saying Kriyat Shema twice a day is you'll come to love Hashem? So we already explained. The problem is that you have to explain it. Okay? Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed, this intermediary is saying that there's something missing between Shema, between just thinking that God is one. You have to understand what those words mean. When I mean God is one, right? Most people don't understand that either. But what does it mean that God is one? And to bring it into a sense of love. Right? So that intermediary, those words, that's Chabad. That is how do I... Huh?
That's the password, Sisma?
It's not the password. It's the operation manual. Password is easy. But now you have to actually learn how to use this.
It's the go button.
Okay. Well, it's more than a go. Again, it's how to use this. כי הנה כתיב, ראה נתתי בפניך היום את החיים ואת המוות, את הטוב ואת הרע. ובחרת בחיים. It says, behold, I have placed before you today, this we'll say in a few weeks, in the Parsha.
The good and the bad.
What?
The good and the bad. And
The good and the life and death. Life and good, חיים ואת הטוב, ואת המוות ואת הרע, and death and evil. ובחרת בחיים, and you should choose life. Okay. Choose life. What a novelty. Okay. As if somebody would ever not choose life.
1 second, the word vacharta is in the past tense, no?
No, vacharta is in the future. U.
Before.
U is a vav hipuch. Vav hipuch takes a verb and turns it from past tense into future tense.
Oh, yeah?
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you did.
I didn't know that.
לאהבה את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך, כי הוא חייך. To love God, there it continues also. It says to love God. What does it mean to choose life? To love God with all of your heart, because He is your life. היינו, כל אחד ואחד שרוצה לעבוד השם צריך לדע בתחילה הבחירה שלו. ולכן כתיב, בחרת בחיים. It says, if you're going to serve God, you should know why. The reason why is because you're choosing life. You're choosing to live. What people call life is not life. You have to choose life. Sometimes, psychologists see this a lot. Psychiatrists see this a lot. You get a perfectly healthy young man or young woman. They come into your office and they don't want to live. They're depressed or this or that. Doesn't matter.
And they're not perfectly healthy.
They're perfectly healthy. Their body's fine. It's not like they're suffering terrible suffering.
And their mind is not healthy.
So, and then suddenly you have to teach them how to choose life. And unfortunately, there's a lot of situations in the world today, and you might say that this is why there's so much suffering. Because we have to learn. We're in the process of learning how to choose life. And since Chassidus came about, Chassidus is already the remedy before the malady. The malady is that people don't know why they're alive. It used to be easy. Why am I alive? I don't care. I would never ask that question. Because life was so hard. just to stay alive, just to survive, was the task. But as we progress in human history, the question is no longer for most of the world. Maybe, I think it's most of the world already. Certainly everybody in the West, certainly everybody in democracies. The question is no longer how to survive. The question is what to survive for. It's become a question, what am I living for? Not whether I will live or die, but what am I living for?
So it comes about from a lack of appreciation.
Said it, but why would you appreciate something if it's given to you for free? What, back 100, 200, 300 years ago, when people had to work, not much like animals, in order to live, it was just to survive. There wasn't a question of why am I surviving, because you had to survive. But now that it's easy to survive, it's relatively very easy. We live in a society that, for all its ills as a society, has brought us unprecedented quality of life. There's never been anything like this for so many people. There were always people who lived like us. But we know, remember, we talked about, who was it? Who was that guy who had to go to the toilet every, Louis the 14th? I don't remember who it was. We talked about this once. A strange anecdote that I picked up somewhere. Because he had terrible breath, right? And so they made him eat, and he had IBS his whole life. It was really...
What's IBS?
You know what IBS is. Irritable bowel syndrome. So he had to go to...
Louis XIV?
It's not either 14 or 16, I don't know which one. So he had, maybe it wasn't even him. I don't remember. But we talked about this a few this year. So we have a better quality of life with our bathrooms than he did with his. Much better. And there's a king. I don't know if we eat better because he had, 50 cooks in his kitchen bringing him everything.
Didn't have a gold-plated bathroom.
But even in terms of hygiene, he didn't have the level that we have. So we're way beyond anything that ever existed in history. Even though there were always people who lived in certain senses better than we do. But our quality of life overall tops everything that ever existed, even for emperors. So what's going on? So now Hashem says, I want to teach you. This is what we're learning now as a humanity. What are we learning? We're learning what to live for. Why are we alive in the first place? He says that's what this pasuk is really saying. Okay? To choose life, he's saying 3,300 years ago when Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Torah, he said it's important to know what you're living for. How much time did people have to ask this question 3,300 years ago? Not very much.
Well, those that wander in the desert for 40 years, that's plenty of time.
But here he's saying this after coming into the land of Israel. He didn't say this to the generation that came out of Egypt. That generation died. So he's saying to the ones who are now entering the land of Israel, he's saying, really, the question is now going to become, what are you living for? That's the question. That's the main. That's the highest level of questioning in life. What am I alive for? So he says you have to know what you're choosing.
Most Jews are alive for their children.
Settle. That's a good reason. If you see godliness in the continuation, so that's very good. How did Rosh Tanzos used to say? That the biggest problem is not cell phones. The biggest problem isn't the internet. Those are not problems. Those are opportunities. The biggest problem is, I don't care. The most people say, I don't care. I don't care about my Judaism. I don't care about Torah. I'm not interested in this. Or as he said, he really used to say this, I don't give a damn. They don't care. Why don't they care? Because they were never taught to choose. They were never shown that there's options here. They don't know that there's an option. They say they choose, but they don't really choose. They don't know what's on the other side. If a person, you say, people understand, people live for their children. So some people do. It's very good. So that's a very Jewish thing. It's a very real thing. Do they do it because they understand that godliness is being revealed through your children? They don't know that. They don't know how to say thank you to Hashem that my children are who they are. They like me, they don't like me. But that I was able to create a continuation. It's a tremendous gift. They don't know how to say thank you to Hashem because they didn't choose it. They chose, but they didn't choose it. They chose because they had to choose to have children, but they didn't choose it as a revelation of godliness in their lives. They don't understand that that's what it is. Like my wife likes to say, that the ultra-Orthodox, we don't know if they have a world to come. We don't know who has a world to come and who doesn't. But we know they have this world. It's a very simple thing, that if you have 10 children, and you have 80 grandchildren, and you have who knows how many 100 great-grandchildren, all in your lifetime, and it comes with its huge share of problems. Nobody's saying that it's all rosy, but you have this world. It's unbelievable, because when you have so many children, you have life. Life is surrounding you. You're surrounded with life. So you first need to know, what are you choosing? So it says you have to choose life. Of course everybody wants to choose life. We explained already that to choose life really was to choose survival. That's not to choose life yet. אדרבה, מי שאוהב חיים הוא אדרבה אוהב את ההיפוך. דהיינו תענוגי העולם הזה. The people who want to survive, what do they want? The people who want life, as it were, what do they want? So to live is to go on a cruise. To live is to eat caviar. To live is to have all the pleasures of life. So that's not life. That's not what we're talking about. So what people call life is not even life. So it turns out that maybe it's the evil inclination. He knows what life is about. So maybe that's what I should choose. So you have to understand the concept of life. What does life mean? It goes back to this simple concept. What does life mean? Hinei ktiv. So it says in the beginning of the Torah, it says that God separated between the higher waters and the lower waters. And it says it twice. Let us make a firmament. Let there be a firmament that will separate between the waters. And God made the firmament, and it separated between the waters above the firmament and the waters underneath the firmament. וצריך להבין למה שינה במאמר זה יותר מבשאר מאמרים, שאמר עניין הבדלת הרקיע שני פעמים, ואם מבדיל בהבדל. Why did he have to say, let there be a firmament that will separate? And then he said there was a firmament and it separated. When he created light, what did it say? Yihio, and then Vayihio. He didn't say what the purpose of the light was. He just said, let there be light. And there was light. He says, Tachea aretz deshe esev masmiach. The earth should grow vegetation. So the earth grew vegetation. We don't see that there's a purpose assigned to the creation, to what he's creating, and then that he actually performs that purpose. By man it says, Naseh Adam b'tzamenu kidvunteinu, and then Vayas Hashem Elokim et ha'adam b'tzalem Elokim bara'ot u'zachar u'nekva bara'otam. Again, there's no purpose yet. In the second story of creation, there is a purpose. But the first story, the only thing that has a purpose, as it were, there's one more that has a. Again, and he says the purpose of them. He says they're for times, for accounting of time. But then he says he just created them. And it doesn't say that they were for the accounting of time. It also wouldn't make sense, because there was no man yet. In any case, this is the only time that there's a purpose, and the fulfillment of the purpose.
What was the purpose of separating the
Good question.
But it doesn't say it.
Hold on. So to understand this separation that's built into creation, we can understand what the separation in the firmament was about from looking at ourselves, because we have this principle, this general rule, from my flesh I will understand godliness. So I understand what God did looking at myself. למשל, כל החיות שבאדם נמשך מהלב. All the life force in man comes from the heart. דהיינו הדרך משל התהוות הקול והדיבור שנמשך מהלב לריאה ומהריאה לקנה, וזהו קול ודיבור שיוצא מהם, וגם אפילו המוח מקבל חיות מן הלב, שעולה מן הלב למוח לחשוב ולהרהר. So you know that the life force in the body is associated with the blood. If the bloodstream would stop streaming, okay, if your Netflix inside would stop working, it would stop streaming. You'd start screaming, and you'd stop functioning. So all the life comes from the heart. והנה זהו בחינת המשכת חיות רוחני מהלב, שהוא משך מזה הדיבור והמחשבה, וכן נמשך מוחן מהלב, חיות גשמי לכל עברים. And it does both things. It gives life to the brain and to the emotions, which are relatively abstract and spiritual, and it gives life to everything that's physical. Okay, they have physical strength, they have physical life. והוא דם הנמשך מהלב לכל האיברים.
Which basically is the Yisrael, or the Nefesh Abahamis, something which is telling you to go away from Hashem.
It's not telling you to go away, like we said. It just doesn't recognize Hashem. It's not telling you to go anywhere.
Emotion tells you to go out and have a good time and enjoy life.
Same, that's why you go to a Verbringen also.
No, it's very good to know your head.
Doesn't mean you're going to do something wrong. You just go out and have a steak dinner. What's the problem? Glad kosher steak dinner. What's the issue?
No issue.
No issue. It's just that the steak doesn't look much like Hashem anymore.
When I take these soldiers and I explain to them, they're putting on two pieces of tefillin, one against the heart, one against the head.
Okay.
I always say, when you've got 30 seconds, to tell them the
whole Torah.
Chabad, right?
30 seconds.
So you say, because the heart is the emotions, which is pushing you towards all the good things in life. And the moach is the one which controls everything. That's why it's higher, physically and spiritually. That's wrong.
No, it's fine.
So if you have to listen to what your moach tells you, you'll be guided by your heart.
Again, and your heart is your emotions, and that also has its value.
But you just said that's wrong.
Why is it wrong?
You said it's not, because the Yisrael is good, or the Nefesh Abahamis is good. You're confusing me.
You have to listen to your mind, because without consciousness of what you're doing, even if it's something good, even if it's a good steak, and you have no consciousness that this is Hashem giving you.
What you're reading it for.
Okay.
So make a problem.
Right. Otherwise, you're just an animal. It's a fine animal. It's like an ox. It eats what it eats. It doesn't do any harm. It's sitting in its pen, eating away. But that's not what a human being is. A human being has a mind where you can recognize why he's doing what he's doing. In any case, both the heart and meaning the emotions and the mind, they're all very good, but they're more abstract than the physical part of the body, which is just sustained also by the heart. So the heart sustains everything. והנה זו בחינת המשכת חיות רוחני מהלב, שהוא נמשך מזה הדיבור, וכן נמשך גשמי, והוא דם נמשך מהלב לכל האיברים. וזה נעשה גידול הבשר. ודם זה נעשה מהמאכל שמתברר בקיבה וכבד, והמובחר עולה ללב, והפסולת יוצא דרך בני מעיים לחוץ. וכל זה הוא מתחלק על ידי הפרסה המפסקת. So there's the way that it's separated in the human being is that from the rib cage and down, this is all the physical part, which is just to sustain life. And from the rib cage and up, these are the more spiritual parts. Okay? In the brain, really in the body, everything is just flesh, including the brain. We're not talking about what an anatomy class would tell us. We're talking about how a person experiences himself. The way that we experience ourselves is that the brain and the heart are higher, and everything that's below the rib cage, everything that's below the diaphragm.
So you're putting the brain and the heart on an equal level?
Yeah, here it's on the same level. and the excrement goes down. Okay? When it goes up, you're sick. Usually the excrement goes down. And you need something to separate the two. So the separation in the human being, the diaphragm, called chatzar hakaved, is to the human what the firmament was to all of the world. All of creation had a firmament. It was the water is above and the water is below. And the same thing, we can understand what they function by looking at the human body. And in the human body, the diaphragm is like the firmament. Okay? And it separates between the higher organs and the lower organs. And the way we say this, most importantly, is this is between the digestive system, which is on the bottom, under the diaphragm. Okay? If you have your stomach, a lot of people have a hernia, a hiatal hernia. Right? So the stomach goes above the diaphragm.
Jewish disease.
Okay? Jewish disease, I think 30% of the people in the world have it. So what does it mean? It means that they're a little bit more spiritual. Their stomach doesn't want to stay underneath the diaphragm. Yeah, it's an artifact. It doesn't mean anything. There's people, I just heard, doesn't matter how I heard this. I don't want to reveal the names. But somebody in Malaysia, that he has GERD.
He has what?
GERD.
What's that?
Gastro and esophageal reflux disease. Whatever.
Oh, okay.
How come you don't? I don't know. How come you don't? When you suffer from everything, you know everything about everything.
He knows more about medicine than medicine knows about medicine.
So this guy, he's 45, he's maybe even 50.
Yeah.
So he went to the doctor, and he really has it bad.
Yeah.
So instead of treating it the way that you should treat it,
Yeah.
what do you take?
Charcoal.
Charcoal make any difference. What do you take when you have GERD?
I don't know, Pramine probably.
No, you don't take. You take Pramine all the time.
I take Pramine for everything.
Yeah.
No.
You take the omeprazole, whatever it's
Oh,
called.
okay, for sure.
All those
Okay.
PPIs, right?
Okay.
So that's what you can give him. Or, if you really want to go the hard way, it takes time, but it heals usually. You do diet changes. You make dietary changes.
Okay.
So what do they do in Malaysia? It turns out
They chop out the stomach out.
they do a hernia operation. It doesn't solve anything. It's been done. It's been tried. The West has tried it for years.
Yeah.
You do a hernia operation. You fix the diaphragm. You pull the stomach down. And guess what?
Nothing else.
Nothing happens. It's all the same. It doesn't matter. Because that's not what's causing it. So it's an artifact. It's an interesting artifact. Why does the stomach in 30% of the population go above? It's like, why do some people have, I don't know, the kidneys are further back or further forward? Why do some people have more teeth, less teeth? We don't know.
To keep life interesting.
Yeah, but it has no meaning.
Some people have their heart on the right hand side as opposed to the left.
Right. That also happens. So what? So they don't live any differently. It's all the same. So this thing about physiology being somehow important for your health is probably not true in 99% of things. But it does have some spiritual significance. It may be that these people, their stomach is saying, I'm not happy being underneath the diaphragm. I want to be above the diaphragm. Okay, what does that mean? It means,
I think you're letting your imagination run away.
Really what I think it means, is that they're saying you have to eat more spiritually. That's like a person who can't just, I'll say it like this, the people whose stomach is like that, it might be a push that the person needs to be more mindful of what they eat. Meaning they have to think more about what they're doing. That's what the stomach is saying. I don't want to be underneath the diaphragm. I don't want to just be there. I also want to be a little bit, obviously it's not the whole stomach. It's never the whole stomach. It's usually 4, 5, 6 centimeters of the stomach. Most of the stomach is usually underneath. Where the main part of the digestion happens is underneath the diaphragm. But still, some of it protrudes higher. What's it saying? It's saying, I belong to a higher world. I belong to something higher. So that's how you have to understand these things. They don't have physical, clinical significance, but they do have some kind of spiritual significance. It's like spiritual anatomy.
A great book about spiritual anatomy.
Okay, I think that's how it needs to be understood. You know, there's whole sites now on the internet with the various deviations from the normative anatomy. And usually these deviations don't mean anything clinically, nothing. So why are they there?
Interesting question. There's a great psychology book which was written, which is called The Normal Child and Some of His Abnormalities.
כך ממש כביכול הנה כתיב צור לבבי שכללות החירות נמשך ממנו לדבר כי דכתיב ואתה מחה את כולם. ויש גם כן שתי בחינות השפעות. In the same way, he says, the life force that comes from God divides into two. Hashem gives life force everywhere, to everything that's below and everything that's above, to both the spiritual beings and the physical beings.
This table has life force?
Of course. Otherwise, how could it exist?
No, in existence.
That's what it says in Tanya. It has a nefesh. It has some kind of...
It doesn't know what's going on. It doesn't know what we're learning.
It doesn't. It's not aware of itself, but of course it knows what's going on. If it didn't, to know what's going on, there's a problem with the word know, because in English, when you say no, or when a human being in general says no, they mean self-reference. They mean that I know. That's not the same thing as saying sensory. Okay? To know is also to sense. So this table, of course, it senses. How did it know how to make a sound?
So it's going to come back and tell everybody what we learned.
What?
So the table's going to give witness.
Okay. What does it mean? It's going to tell us. It's not going to. It's not like it has a memory. The universe has a memory. The universe as a whole, every time you change the state of matter in any way, it registers everywhere. Today they call it something like the butterfly effect or something like that. The flying butter effect, right? If you throw butter at somebody, they feel it. That's a butterfly effect. So it's not that the table itself, has no self-consciousness, but it's part of the sensory universe. That everything you do has an effect. And it's registered in some way. And when we talk about entropy considerations, so when you look at the entropy considerations of a system, you look at everything. Everything has meaning. Everything is contributing to the state of entropy, meaning to the state of order or disorder in the system. So these things are all very, very aware. It's just not, they're not aware of themselves. They're not aware of the way human beings were, or even an animal, or even a plant. But a plant, to say that it's aware like a human being is also a fallacy. It doesn't understand.
Know what's going on.
They know in the sense that they know where the sunlight is, so they move in that direction.
They respond to human beings.
They respond to some things. Again, to be responsive doesn't mean you know.
It means the plant responds to them.
That's hearsay. So it's either true or not. I don't know. I think the jury is still out on that. Okay, we have to end now?
But I have a great story for you.
Ah, no.
Was in England a magnificent chassid, one of the nicest guys I ever met. His name was Arav Mordechai Safrin, may he rest in peace. So him and his Avdil brother and one of his cousins who are still alive now, there were four Safrins in the original Chabad of England. And they all came from Ger Hasidim, they all lived in Manchester. So Mordechai told me they once went to a shtibel to daven. And in the shtibel, in Manchester, in the shtibel, there's signs everywhere. The whole walls, all the way around. He said he'd never been in a place where there was so much talking and davening from beginning to end. Absolutely just couldn't hear. So he went to the Gabbai and said, I don't understand. You have all this shletim, and everybody here just talks from the minute they walk in to the minute they walk out. He says, you don't understand what those signs mean. He says, what do they mean? He says, in the time of Mashiach and the world to come, after 120, these walls are going to come and testify everything that they heard that went on in the shtibel. So we're telling the walls, Asur ledaber, you're not allowed to say what you heard, Bezman tefillah v'krias, you're not allowed to give lashon hara on what we did that we taught. Nice.